Welcome to the review of Champions of Krynn. The game was created by Strategic Simulations and released in 1990. It's part of the Gold Box series, and this one in particular takes place in the Dragonlance world. It's a fantasy role-playing game. If you haven't already watched my reviews of Pool of Radiance, Curse of the Azure Bonds, and Seeker of the Silver Blades, I recommend you go do that first, as this review builds on some of the previous reviews. You're presented with the familiar main menu where you can create characters, although the races you'll notice are different in the Dragonlance world. We have Kender, Hill Dwarf, Mountain Dwarf, and various elves. The classes are pretty much the same, although there are a couple new ones which I'll discuss in a few minutes. So basically you choose your alignment, you roll to get random statistics, and you choose your icon and name your character. It works the same as the previous games. The modify feature is also back, so you can basically cheat and make the characters exactly the way you want. The Knight is a new character class. It is somewhat like a paladin, but not quite. They have to be lawful good. And anytime you enter a town, you must tithe some of the money you have. Clerics in this game actually pick the god that they will represent. And that gives various bonuses such as spells and other special abilities. It also limits your alignment. Another difference in the Dragonlance world is mages are either white or red depending on their alignment, and it limits the types of spells you can cast. The game has copy protection just like before, where you have to look up records in the journal or the rule book. The graphics utilize EGA, which is 16 colors, which is pretty lacking for the time considering it was 1990. One thing I noticed right off the bat is although it starts with the overhead view, you basically start directly in an outpost. And it's kind of cheap because you don't even really get to explore. You're just greeted by a man named Sir Carl, and he kind of acts as a commander and gives you missions and things to do. Just like the other Gold Box games, you have to look things up in this journal entry, which is kind of a pain in the butt, especially nowadays since you don't physically have the book. But anyway, you start in this town, and there's the typical things such as the inn, where you can go to camp and rest and memorize spells. Here we have a cleric, and you'll notice he had a special spell, which is because of his god. You just memorize the spells as the previous games. This is a magic user / cleric, so you'll notice he has all kinds of different spells, plus all those special spells, again because he's a red mage and a cleric. I don't like how it mixes in all the first level spells together, because you have a hard time separating the cleric from the magic user, and sometimes it gets confusing. And it's vague because the bonus spells there apply to the magic user, but you wouldn't know it. You get bonus spells based on where the moons are in this game, and based on if you're a red or white mage, which is a very interesting twist. The game uses steel pieces instead of gold. Your characters luckily start with a pretty good amount of steel to buy basic equipment. You can also ID magic items as you find them in the shop. There's also a vault where you can store money or withdraw it at later times, because you do end up finding quite a bit in the game. There's the training hall, which is very familiar. You can increase your character's levels. I always found it kind of odd that you had to actually go to a training hall to level up when you actually have experience. When mages level up, they get to choose a new spell. Knights also have the ability to change classes, which basically allows them to become a more powerful one if their attributes are high enough. Again, the mage's spells are limited based on if they're red or white. Evil characters are black, but you can't play them in the game. So you can talk to the commander and get missions. And then you begin to explore. You'll notice that the combat screen is the same as before in the previous games. They reused a lot of graphics in these games, which obviously allowed them to knock them out quicker, but it does get kind of repetitive. At least the outside shows rocks and trees and things of that nature, which can actually interfere with your ability to use missile weapons. Combat works just like it did in the previous games. And the inside battles are very similar too. You'll notice the same old walls that you saw even in Pool of Radiance. The new race called Kender has the ability to yell. This influences who the monsters will attack in combat. They also have a special item called a Hoopak, which can act as a ranged and melee weapon. It's the only one in the game. There's a new class of monsters called Draconians, and they have different special abilities, like making it where if you kill them, they either turn into acid or your weapon gets stuck inside them. And of course, the acid puddles, you take damage when you walk through them. They also have the ability to paralyze you. And some, like this Bozak, even explode on death. In fact, it can actually set off a chain reaction of explosions if the explosions kill more Bozaks. Fighters still have the sweep ability to take out lower hit dice creatures like in the previous games. And fighters can have 2 attacks as they get higher in level as well. Clerics have the turn dead ability. And of course you have your strategic spells, such as Lightning Bolt, which makes the Lightning Bolt travel in a path. We have the same disabling type spells, such as Stinking Cloud and Charm Person. You can be poisoned when killed instantly, which incidentally when that happens and the whole party dies, you get the old screen, Monsters Rejoice. If you are killed by poison, you can use Neutralize Poison spell, which is a level 4, or you can visit a temple and have it done there. You can use wands and other mass destruction weapons. Even if you don't know what type it is, it still allows you to use it. And after combat, you're presented with the same old screens we normally see, where you take equipment and you gain experience. You can cast Detect Magic, which shows an asterisk next to magical equipment. And in order to heal your wounds after combat, you can cast Cure Wounds spells if you have clerics, or you may have a few potions of healing or extra healing. Anyone can use those. If you're in a safe area, the Fix command is best, as it makes you cast as many spells as you can and rest and memorize them automatically. You can get area views in dungeons, or you can look from the first person perspective. In some spots, they won't let you see the area view. You'll have many encounters and lots of options presented to you throughout the game. One of the things I never understood about the Gold Box series was how much experience you get from finding treasure. You get way more experience for finding treasure than you do fighting in combat. That's just a little bizarre to me. There's 3 ways to get into locked doors. You can bash them down with strength, a thief can try to pick the door, or you can cast a knock spell. And some doors require special magical items in order to open them. You'll also discover there's quite a few traps in the game, although not quite as many as Pool of Radiance. You'll run across quite a few NPCs in the game. That's non-player characters. The computer controls them even though they join your party. It allows you to view them and view their items, but you can't actually control them. One thing I found very interesting about this game was I got this NPC called Soldier who ended up actually kind of being a backstabber. So what you can do is drop them. But you can find some pretty powerful NPCs. You can even get this dragon in your party at one point. There's red scrolls which red magic users can use, and of course white which only white can use. The game won't let you equip them or use them unless you're the right class. I felt like the number of magic user spells was already limited, but the red and white and black makes it much worse. The game has a lot of typical enemies that you saw in some of the previous games. Powerful dragons. But it also has some of the same creatures that will attack you over and over. You will get so tired of seeing these fighters and champions and all these draconians. That's probably my biggest pet peeve of this game. It just gets so repetitive fighting the same things over and over, especially when you don't find any good treasure. And now for some quirkiness. I found a mace. They'll sell that one for 1 steel, but this one's 0 steel. That makes no sense. Another really weird thing that I noticed was if you're charmed and one of your characters is left and the rest of your party's destroyed, it says your party's fled and all that's left is your one character that was charmed. The rest are gone. You can't even resurrect them. A cool feature is if you actually get charmed, you can cast Charm Person on your own character to bring them back. Dispel Magic works too, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. One spell that was pretty much useless in the previous games is fairly useful in this one, and that's Snake Charm, because you'll fight a lot of snakes in this one. The game is really poor AI, so this green dragon breathes poison on my party, but watch all the enemies he kills for me. Another thing I'm not fond of the game is all the graphics look the same. Here I go in this different outpost that looks just like the first one. And something even stranger was I came across this random group of adventurers just sitting there in the middle of nowhere, and they set up the training. And it's a hall. I can train characters, I can change classes, save the game. You can even create new characters from here. And that just doesn't make sense. And as I leave, guess which graphics I'm presented with. Even the NPCs you meet are reused. The graphics are reused for different characters. It just feels like they tried to rush it out and didn't have time to create more uniqueness. And now for a WTF moment. So I meet this woman who actually ends up turning out to be a dragon, and she's in love with a man. Yeah, a dragon is in love with a man. She's also obsessed with casting magic missile. She's a dragon, for crying out loud, and she keeps casting magic missile. Finally, I got her to breathe cold once. There's some cursed items that can cause you to go berserk, which is kind of cool. And I noticed it by the fact that my guy hides his share after combat like he was not on my own team. So come to find out, I couldn't unequip his two-handed sword. So I got my trusty Remove Curse spell. And no more cursed item. Actually, it just unequips it. You still have the item. So you can take it to a store and sell it. So all in all, I'd say this game is probably either average or below average for a Gold Box series game. That being said, all the Gold Box games in my mind are pretty awesome. I think what makes me least likely to replay this one is the repetitive combat. It just feels like you're fighting the same types of enemies over and over. Another thing that's kind of irritating is you complete all these missions for Sir Carl, and yet you get no reward. You don't even get experience when you come back and tell him that you've completed the missions. I miss the old days of Pool of Radiance, where you're rewarded for completing missions. One thing that is fairly nice is you can get up to 4th level spells in the game. I remember in Pool of Radiance you were limited to 3rd level, so it's kind of a hybrid in between the more powerful Gold Box games and the more simple ones. I also don't really like how you have to mess around with the moons in order to maximize when you get bonus spells as a mage, plus how it limits you. Plus, in this game there's not really a whole lot of magical equipment to buy. You'll find a few magic shops here and there, but they all sell pretty much the same thing. Wand of Magic Missiles, which is ridiculously expensive. I had dumped all my gems and jewelry into steel in order to buy one. And I'm not sure if it's random or not, but my wand only lasted 6 charges. That's pretty pathetic for 14,000 steel. But all the magic shops have this big boobed girl, so that's a plus. You will meet some characters from the Dragonlance world, such as Tanis. And there is a fairly wide variety of weapons of mass destruction, such as a necklace of missiles, which does lower amounts of damage than a wand of ice storm or a wand of fireballs. You do get experience for doing good acts in the game, such as freeing prisoners. And there's quite a few events, which kind of reminds me of Pool of Radiance, such as catching this thief who is pickpocketing you. So overall, I think the game's very entertaining and fun, even with all the WTF moments and quirkiness. It's nice to be introduced into the Dragonlance world, which is a little different than the Forgotten Realms world of Pool of Radiance and so forth. I do like how they tried to integrate some of the characters from Dragonlance, and you have Draconians and things of that nature. So overall, if you like the Gold Box series games, this is definitely a good one to get into. This is part 1 of 3 in the Dragonlance world. I hope you enjoyed this review, and we'll see you next time.